Reason Podcast does not believe in curses or hexes and is unconcerned with what offends you. We do not believe that words have the power to compel spirits or demons to affect your life in any way. If you do, well, there is a reason why the explicit tag is there.
Listening to Reason Podcast. Reason. To think, understand, and form judgments by a process of logic.
Hello, and welcome to Reason. Today is Sunday, January 20th, and this episode is entitled, For the Second Time, America Has the First Black President Sworn in on a tiny Bible, on top of a larger Bible, followed by a very Latino ceremony. Leave it to a secret Muslim to court the illegal immigrant vote after being elected. I'm Joshua Billingsley, along with Paul Whitmire.
How you doing?
David Ward.
Good evening.
And this podcast is coming to you live from sunny Buffalo, New York. Reason Podcast is a weekly discussion of events, both current and historical, from a skeptical, a rational, and a non-theological perspective. Reason Podcast is brought to you by the Offensive Atheists and the atheist community of Buffalo and Western New York. For further information, please visit our blog and website at wnyatheist.org or email us at reason@wnyatheist.org. Our solar system's second smallest and speediest planet still causing surprises. Yes. We're talking about Mercury this week.
Yes, we are. And you're talking about Mercury from an interesting perspective here.
Well, this is part one of our 10,278,278,312 part series called The Planets.
That may be a slight exaggeration. I'm going to clean up that number a little bit when we get to the section. But
yeah, well, we'll do some basic math. There's a lot of planets, and I assume that we're not just going to do the 8 or 9 that we know of, really close. We'll keep going as science develops. So, we'll be doing every planet.
Yeah, they keep finding more. So, this is eventually going to be a 4 million part series that's going to last at least 27 million years because we're really slow and we talk a lot.
Well, we're not going to do one a week either. So,
no.
We're going to do them every couple weeks here or there. So, but this week we thought we would start with the first planet. And everybody knows Mercury, Venus, Earth, so we'll start with Mercury. Now, anybody out there that knows really anything at all about astronomy knows that Mercury is a really stupid planet. It's a boring, stupid planet, but since we're doing them all, we had to start somewhere.
Now, Josh, as we'll get to, apparently has just this seething, burning, fiery hate for the planet Mercury.
It's very close to the sun. But so as you all know out there, we begin the show with a primary source journal article or a legal decision, and so I went in search of some science, a really interesting journal article about the planet Mercury.
Good, exciting science, dynamic that would make good radio.
Really, exactly, and there's a lot of stuff on how it wiggles and wobbles.
Yeah, they like
and
to
what
talk
that
about
means, about the tilt of it. Sometimes about the thickness of the crust, but none of those were really meaty. So I expanded my search to Christian Ministries International, which is a creationism. Is it still creationism? Maybe it's intelligent design.
I think they stuck with the creationism
Oh, actually,
name.
no. This is creationist. So yes, it's a creationist website that has some scholarly articles about things.
Well, they don't go with the intelligent design angle because they're like, that's watered down bullshit. That's
these guys are hardcore.
Yep.
And this particular article, our solar system's second smallest and speediest planet is still causing problems. It's still causing problems for, as they say in the article, evolutionists, because of the inability to provide an evolutionary explanation as to Mercury.
What?
I have a question about that.
Yes.
Is there anywhere in the article that you're going to be discussing where they explain that they understand that evolution is a biological process And
not an astronomical process?
Correct, yes.
No. In fact, they never talk about astronomers, astronomy, or anything else. Their opposition is always evolutionists. They're disproving evolution by talking about Mercury.
So they believe, just to get this straight, that evolutionists believe that the planets were formed by natural selection, and this is wrong.
I believe that is the premise. It's an unspoken premise in the paper, but it's the only one that fills in the other side of the argument that they're arguing against.
All right. Well, let's see where this takes us.
Well, there are a couple of basic problems, and I think they're ones that we could all agree are problems with the scientific theories that we have about the planet Mercury.
Okay.
Mostly because Mercury is boring and nobody studies Mercury. They mention here a few times it being the smallest of the 9 planets, but I will give them some slack because I did take a look, and this paper was produced, 1 year before we dropped Pluto, so I can't really argue with that.
Okay.
But a couple of basic problems that they have that show that there's a creationist perspective as opposed to an evolutionist perspective.
On Mercury?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, okay.
I look forward to hearing these.
Well, the first one, it's quite reasonable. The first one is that Mercury has the highest density of all the known planets other than Earth.
Okay, I was gonna call bullshit on that one, but yeah.
Nope. They actually have some sites at the end of this from, like, what do you call those? I'm assuming evolutionist scientists.
The thinkerizers?
Yes, those guys that do that evolutionist astronomy. Mercury is so dense that it's thought to have an iron core occupying some 75% of its diameter. They seem to believe that it couldn't possibly be that dense considering the way that we believe planets are formed. And they basically criticize the evolutionist theory of slow and gradual development of planets for quite a while before they actually move on to what their real problem is. They have a problem with asteroids.
Who doesn't?
Well, they seem to believe that asteroids are used as a catch-all in every way for anything we don't understand. Like, what killed the dinosaurs? Asteroid.
Yeah.
Why does Venus spin a weird direction? Asteroid. Why is this planet at a weird tilt that we can't presume, or this moon? Asteroid.
Why does Bruce Willis keep getting parts in movies?
Asteroid. Yes. And they go through this for quite a while. Here we go. Over and over in astronomy, see, they do mention astronomy. In astronomy, cosmic collisions are invoked as a sort of magic wand to rescue evolutionary theories from the facts. The planet Uranus is tilted over, but evolution says it can't be.
So, in other words...
Well, please, let me go on. I'm sorry.
Continue.
Therefore, long ago, something hit it and knocked it over. Venus's rotation contradicts evolutionary predictions. Therefore, long ago, something hit it and spun it round the opposite way. Mars's atmosphere is too thin for evolutionists. I keep screwing that up. It just doesn't make sense. I'm sorry.
No, because it's not a real word.
Right. So their argument is that the asteroid impact is a magic wand used by evolutionists to explain any of the holes in the evolutionary planetary development theory.
As opposed to the magic wand that's used by the almighty creator to magically tilt Uranus over on its side. Did they have...
No, if you're wondering, do they have a better explanation as to why Uranus is tilted or why Venus goes this... Because God made it that way.
Do they get into it? I'm sorry to keep harping on this, but so which part of Darwin's theory of evolution through natural selection states that Uranus couldn't be tilted on its side?
You used asteroids. Asteroids seem very convenient for you.
Yeah, well, we like our shortcuts.
That is their first problem, and yes, I believe, Paul, you're going to go into some detail about the formation or the theories of formation of Mercury, but that is, yes, they are correct. One of the possible explanations we have come up with as to why it's the way it is.
Asteroids?
Yes. Okay. Well, considering that it's pockmarked and covered with obvious signs of impact, It seems to me that that's not a big stretch, that it got hit in the past, and at one time or another, maybe with a really big asteroid.
Yeah, if you look at the surface of Mercury, you'll notice it's been smacked into once or twice. It's more modeled than the moon. So.
Yes. So that's their first problem. I know what you're thinking. You're pretty compelled.
Oh, yeah.
So far, you're thinking, well, maybe creationism isn't all wrong. Their second problem is to be billions of years old and still have a magnetic field, there must be fluid motions within the planet's core.
Okay.
Therefore, the core itself must be molten. But, as one evolutionist says, Mercury is so small that the general opinion is that the planet, i.e. its core, should have frozen solid eons ago. And that's also a reasonable concern superficially. Yes, that is correct. And it does raise another question. But, as we have seen time and time again, creationism is nothing more than saying your theory isn't perfect. You haven't answered all the questions.
Yeah.
So it's wrong, God.
It also doesn't account for the fact that the core could be solid and there still could be a magnetic field surrounding the planet.
Which is the theory. I actually looked up the guy that said that, who is Jay Safati on the Earth's magnetic field, when he discusses that, and he says that it would be possible that, it could be something else.
Yes.
It might be something else altogether. Wouldn't that be interesting? But, the creationists, they don't like interesting things.
No.
They like to be done.
Yep. Wrap that up and put a bow on it. It's not liquid. God.
But they do make a positive statement here, a positive claim, which we can now evaluate. Creationists have no problem explaining the magnetic field of Mercury, nor that of any other planet. There are several ways in which a young, 6,000-year-old, planet could still have a magnetic field.
And?
No, that's it. That is correct, isn't it? A 6,000-year-old planet could have a magnetic field. Is that correct?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we can go with
there
that.
You go. Therefore, God.
Wow.
That is the solitary, positive claim that they make in the entire article. Everything else is making mockery, and in some cases, very, very poor mockery. Sometimes it's actually raising a legitimate concern that they got from scientists, not evolutionists, mind you, but astronomers and astrophysicists who came up with the question first. So they stole all their criticisms of universe evolution, I guess.
Yes.
They stole that from people that actually study it, admit this is a question, and propose theories. They stole that from them. So science is really good at poking holes in science, but any of the positive claims, those have got to be false.
Yeah.
That's creationism. Anything that proves that there's a problem with your theory, within your theory, that you claim must be true, and we will believe it. Any of the claims that prove your theory must be false.
How is it so possible that they can so completely misunderstand science, scientific principle, scientific technique?
They're opposed to teaching it. You know that, right?
But they use sciencey sounding words. They must have gone and at least superficially looked them up, and you think.
Well, I think they read them.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I left out the best part of the entire article.
Okay.
It's written by a Spike Saris.
Did he write it with a crayon?
Well, it's on a computer, so I think it was written on a device invented by an atheist homosexual.
Yeah.
And it was promoted through the use of many clever atheists who have made the internet and technology go on further. So they obviously are making a tacit acceptance that atheists know more about science. And using that to criticize science.
If it's Creation Ministries International, they probably wouldn't be very successful at being international if it weren't for the thousands of atheists who came up with things like planes and emails and internets and tubes and, stuff.
Yes.
Satellites.
So, again, it just goes back to, and I guess I'll finish this with my basic claim. It seems absurd to me that any time a scientist says anything that could be critical of science, the creationists take it as gospel. clearly he's right. He's a scientist.
Yes.
And anytime they say anything positive about any of the theories in science they don't like, they say that's absurd. Science is bogus. And you can't have it both ways.
Yep.
And I find it absurd, and I find it hilarious that they don't acknowledge that anywhere. That they don't seem to notice it as they're doing it. I've gotten into arguments with creationists on the internet, and that seems to be their entire tactic. Anytime somebody says something which is critical of science or critical of, let's say, evolution, actual real evolution, not the development of Mercury.
Planetary evolution.
Okay. Anytime somebody says something critical about that, they sing their praises. He went to this fantastic school. He's got 2 PhDs. He's well-learned. He's scholarly. He's all these things. And then when you say something that's proves evolution or a claim made toward evolution, they say, well, yeah, but he was schooled in evolutionary theory. He's been programmed by these people. He doesn't think for himself. He's towing the party line.
Yep, it's just a theory.
It's especially great when it's the same scientist that you guys are referring to.
Which sometimes it really is.
Yeah, it certainly can happen. Well, it's just amazing to me that this can happen. I mean, evolutionists, who the fuck are they talking about?
They're talking about people that believe the world was not created 6,000 years ago by an invisible, man with a beard.
Because, there's
an invisible beard.
There's astrophysicists, there's geologists, there's,
astronomers,
cosmologists.
Oh, there you go. Good.
But I know not to this evolutionists. I mean, there's evolutionary biologists. You know what they study? What was that word that begins with a B? Oh yeah, fucking biology.
Oh yes, the thing that evolutionary theory applies to.
Yes.
Well, that would actually make sense. You should write them a letter.
No, I think the evolutionary theory can apply to Mercury, though. There was a lot of Mercury. Some of them were bigger, some of them were smaller, some of them were faster and slower. And the Mercuries that were slower died off.
Well, they got eaten.
Yes.
They got eaten by planetary predators.
Yeah, there was
like Jupiter. Jupiter probably ate them.
Yep. And Jupiter's, big on eating things because it's big.
Yes, that's true. It's a glutton.
Yeah.
That's why it's a sinful planet.
All right. Well, I'm glad we've cleared this all up. So,
moving on.
All right. Well, as Josh mentioned, the topic for today is Mercury. We were talking about the planet Mercury and, a bunch of other fun stuff as well. So, give us a call if you have any questions, comments, concerns. The number is 424-243-9589. There's also a chat room at blogtalkradio.com. You can go in there and, read the interesting comments about people's opinion on Josh's article and its validity. So it's always a good time.
It's well cited. It's got 6 citations. 5 of them from real scientists.
Wow. The 6th one from
a
Big
creation
Bird.
Scientist.
Oh, a creation scientist.
Another person like Spike, who has no letters after his name. And again, I don't think that accreditation in that way is necessarily something we need to have, but to be an expert in the field, you need to have studied it, and it's much easier to study it when you go to school for that.
That is true. I was actually planning on getting a PhD in creation science, but apparently that you can't because they don't have one.
Yeah. They have a PhD in intelligent design, though. Can you criticize evolution?
Evolution.
Flagellum.
Evolution is dumb, and Darwin was kind of balding.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think you are eligible for a PhD in intelligent design.
Well, I have to write it up in thesis form. So
Yes, and then present it to a bunch of morons.
yeah. Morons, what? Okay. So we're going to move on to discuss some current events, some things that are happening in the newses and whatnot. Some interesting things have happened over the past week, and I'm going to start off by talking about what is actually a blog post, but I couldn't resist. This is from a blog called Standing on My Head, which is written by a Father Dwight Longenecker. Longenecker.
Okay, well, I assume his people come from the long-necked.
It is a blog post entitled Reality and Religion. And it's basically a discussion of a book called Proof of Heaven, written by a Dr. Eben Alexander.
I heard this guy on NPR.
Oh, did you?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, they gave him play because, they do that.
Well,
lefties,
Dr. Eben Alexander is a neurosurgeon.
Mm-hmm.
A surgeon of the brain. Somebody who studied the brain.
The brain, yes.
What the various parts do as best we can understand them, and was actually trusted enough after a good 14 or 15 years of schooling, all told, was trusted enough to be given a scalpel and allowed to cut into people's brains.
They mostly do that with a little teeny tiny vacuum cleaner, don't they?
Well, first they got to cut the skin open with the
that's
scalpel.
True. They use the scalpel. You're right. I'm sorry.
And then they get a drill, and then and then the vacuum cleaner.
Yes.
So it's a step-by-step process. That's why it takes 15 years to.
They give you the scalpel after 15. After 16, they have the drill, and after 20, they actually stick the vacuum cleaner in and scoop around with the goop.
So this Dr. Eben Alexander, neurosurgeon, wrote this book, Proof of Heaven, discussing his experience with having an operation himself and having a near-death experience, going to heaven, and now completely and totally understanding God, religion, and mysticism. Yes. So, Father Dwight Longenecker, he doesn't talk much about religion in the book, but he explains how, after his experience when he went back to church, it's with its music, stained glass, and sense of the sacred, he suddenly, quote, got it, end quote. He sees what religion is really for. It is meant to give you a glimpse of heaven.
Oh my God, is heaven like that? Do you have to stand up and kneel and sing really bad songs in a monotone voice all the time?
Yeah, oh God, where is my head?
I look forward to going to hell where people gamble and there's lots of drugs and prostitutes and, people that party. That's what I look forward to then.
Would I at least be able to play the music?
No.
Damn it. I want to go to hell.
You'd be forced to watch someone else play the music with a completely out of tune guitar and no sense of rhythm.
That sounds more like hell.
Or timing. And then Josh would sing.
Oh my God, no, we don't want that.
So,
no, I'm sure that actually is hell.
It would be fine if Dr. Eben Alexander, neurosurgeon, stopped there. But he doesn't. The neurosurgeon goes on to talk about one of the more intriguing things about the book is Dr. Alexander's musings on the world of the brain and its relationship to consciousness.
The brain has a relationship to consciousness?
Apparently so.
Oh, right. That's new information for me.
Dr. Alexander explains his view that consciousness is bigger than the brain, and the brain functions as a kind of filter or organizing machine for consciousness. Said Dr. Eben Alexander, neurosurgeon. So, that contradicts everything that the medical science has learned about the brain, how it works, what consciousness is.
Well, not everything. We've also learned the brain is squishy, and it could be squishy, so almost everything.
Yeah, but certainly we haven't really gotten anything to the point where we're prepared to say, as scientists, that the consciousness is bigger than the brain. I don't know what that means.
It means that it's larger than your head.
Like a sombrero.
Or a halo.
Or a sombrero.
That's why Mexicans wear the sombrero. They're very Catholic.
That does make sense.
And they all want to look like they have halos.
So he states that the demands of everyday life can, quote, forget the higher functions of consciousness, lose the capabilities, and be too occupied dealing with the functions of the material world that it does not have the time or capability to be open to spiritual realities. And he also reveals the reason for religion. Religion is not there just to make the world a better place and help the poor, feed the hungry, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, fuck them.
But there's the real purpose of religion is to teach the human heart the reality of the divine.
Ooh, does he explain what that is?
No, he does not.
Oh. Okay.
So I'm gonna read the last paragraph in this article, and we'll just chat about it for a second, and then move on to something I'm sure entirely more rational. Guns. Okay. All right. Finally, Dr. Alexander comes back from his near-death experience saying that he is totally convinced that there is a higher connectedness and purpose in the universe. Nothing is wasted. All of this works together, and the love and light far, far exceeds the darkness and evil. He believes there is a higher purpose and a connectedness, and our job is to perceive that, to learn how to discern it, and live within the higher purpose and connectedness. In other words, to say, quote, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, end quote. So, this reminds me of your friend and mine, Ron Paul.
Okay.
Ron Paul, the medical doctor who stood up at one of the debates in the past year stating that he did not believe in the theory of evolution.
Yeah, they said, everybody raise your hand who believes in the theory of evolution, and only one of the Mormons, the one we didn't remember, only he raised his hand and said he believed in evolution. Ron Paul was one of the ones that said he did not believe in the theory of evolution. Right,
which is absolutely astounding and frightening to me because, I don't actually know what Ron Paul's medical specialty was, but in this article we're talking about a neurosurgeon, somebody whose job it is, apparently, to know exactly what the parts of the brain do and what happens when they're damaged, what happens when there's oxygen deprivation and things like that. And we've talked about the brain and memory a number of times on this show. And a lot of these otherworld experiences can be explained by simple things such as oxygen deprivation, stimulating certain parts of the brain. There's actually a part of the brain where, when stimulated in various ways, people do report having a, quote, religious experience, end quote. In fact, Michael Shermer, who writes skeptical books such as Why People Believe Weird Things and so on and so forth, actually subjected himself to a machine that stimulated this part of his brain, and he reported that he had hallucinations and felt a warmth and a sense of peace and so on and so forth. So there's a part of the brain, when you mess with it, it makes you think you're seeing God.
Yeah.
And you'd think as a neurosurgeon, this guy would know that or at least acknowledge it. Now, I haven't read his book. This is, again, a post by a priest who is doing a review of this book. But from what the priest says, unless he's leaving out vast quantities of information, I don't think that I would necessarily agree with this Dr. Alexander's assessment of what happened to him in medical terms.
Well, I hate to interrupt you because I did a quick search and I just want to fill in for our audience because I know everyone's on the edge of their seat. Obstetrics and gynecology.
Oh,
that's
actually,
what Ron Paul did.
I did know that.
He did the girly parts.
So, obstetrics and gynecology deals with the embryos as they grow up to be the babies.
Yes.
And
yes.
That's there was the whole ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny, which said that we had gills in the womb and stuff like that.
That was a fun theory. That was interesting.
Not true.
No, of course not.
But still, there's a lot of evolutionary understanding in the growth and development of fetuses into babies. So you'd think he would be a little bit more versed in the...
It's not like he's working in immunology or something that it actually could come into play with vaccines like the flu virus, that sort of thing, which, in my opinion, kind of proves evolution.
Yeah.
But he doesn't work in that field. He works in the girly parts, and he works on the itsy-bitsy babies that follow mechanized development that one could argue God designed. So you got to give Ron Paul some slack there. He probably flunked only 7 or 8 of the classes in medical school.
Yeah, okay.
By his lack of belief in, the science.
I don't necessarily feel I have to give Ron Paul any sort of slack there, and I'm not going to. And I'm also not going to give this Dr. Alexander and his magical near-death experience going to heaven and finding out that heaven looks pretty much like a church with the music and the stained glass. So that's the article I wanted to discuss this week. Yes. If anyone out there decides that they're going to read this book, send us an email and tell us why.
And then tell us about it, because there's probably no way I'm going to read this book unless you give me a damn fine reason.
All right. Well, let's move on to something else.
Something completely different.
All right. So I have a quick question for you guys. What sort of things would you expect a 7-year-old boy to have in his backpack, put there by his mother?
Put there by his mother, huh?
A ham and cheese sandwich.
Okay.
That's fair. Bisquick.
Probably Bisquick. Yeah, definitely Bisquick. Ooh, like that those cans of pancake mix that you just spray in the pan.
Yeah.
Because kids do a lot of cooking at home ec.
Yeah.
It's true.
Also, what's a backpack without spray cheese?
Well, yes, spray cheese and spray confetti. Don't get those mixed up.
Yes.
And I'm going to say...
Well, surprise. Mom packed you a nice gun.
Oh, that is nice.
That is...
Just in case.
Is it packing for the schoolerizing?
Well, let's see. He didn't expect to have this a flare gun and a .22 caliber with a loaded magazine in his backpack.
I'm sorry, both?
Yes.
Did he have a rape whistle?
No.
But he had a flare gun.
Yes.
Okay.
A flare gun and a .22 caliber pistol.
Yes, that's what was inside his sweet kick-ass Batman backpack.
Well, you fire the flare gun to alert people, and then you shoot any assailants. Is that way you get to be the hero of your school? This is good.
This does make sense. You definitely fire the flare gun in the hallway with the 8-foot-high ceiling.
Yes.
That won't cause any problems.
No, it's fine.
It's good.
They put asbestos in those tiles. They're not going to burn.
No, it'll be fine.
Well, apparently his mother, Deborah Farley, informed police that she had been out walking the streets of Queens.
She was a streetwalker?
Yes, with the guns in her son's backpack, and then she forgot to take them out.
Why was she out walking the streets of Queens with her son's Batman backpack?
Yes.
Okay.
It doesn't say.
There's weird prostitution rituals in Queens. That's why I don't go to Queens. It's very confusing.
I still get hung up on the .22 caliber pistol and a flare gun.
Yes.
Was she going boating?
Well, no. If she's walking the streets of Queens, the flare gun makes more sense. There are not 8-foot ceilings.
This is true.
Aha! Now it all makes perfect sense. I'm in perfect agreement with this so far.
All right. I will accept it.
So anyway, when she noticed that she had forgotten to take them out, she rushed back to school and asked him what happened if he still had them. And apparently, he told her that that he had given the gun to a classmate.
Really?
Oh, well, the classmate may have had a bone to pick on the schoolyard,
Yeah.
Got to get up, right?
I'm sure he had valid reasoning to have a gun.
You can see that.
My lunch money, motherfucker! My lunch money! What now, bitch? Yeah.
You can see that, though. I mean, they're out at recess. He sees Timmy sitting over in the corner. He's like, Timmy, why do you look so sad? Here, have a flare gun.
Did he give him the flare gun or the .22?
Well, let's find out, shall we? She went and told the administrators,
I accidentally sent my son to school with firearms.
Yeah. And so they put the school on lockdown and called the police. So then they searched the backpack and found that, yes, he had only given away the flare gun, not the one that
he's a reasonable fellow.
killed people more quickly.
He seems responsible.
Yes.
Did he? I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. Did he say what he wanted his classmate to do with the flare gun?
No.
Damn it!
Did he trade or anything? Did he get like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich out of the deal?
Or a baseball card.
Yeah, baseball card. He put it in the spokes on your bike.
I'm sure it was a chocolate pudding.
Yeah, it could be.
That does make sense. I do like chocolate pudding.
It's very delicious.
Very delicious.
So when the boy told that he had handed it over to a classmate, they checked the backpack and found that the pistol and the loaded magazine and the bullets, a bag of bullets, were still in the bag.
Bag of bullets?
I assume it was on safety, though, so it's fine.
Yeah, totally fine. And thankfully, no one was hurt. And the police decided to arrest Farley on charges of endangering the welfare of a child.
That does seem reasonable.
Oh, really?
And criminal possession of a firearm because it was unlicensed.
Yeah, she kind of shit the bed on that one.
Yeah, whoops.
And then they searched her home and found more ammunition and 7 bags of marijuana.
That explains the backpack walking through Queens.
Okay, let that be a lesson to
Did
all
she leave any marijuana in the backpack, or was she smart enough to sell out of the marijuana before she headed home?
Let that be a lesson to all of our listeners out there. If you accidentally send your child to school with a firearm and need to call the police, it would be best to remove the marijuana from your abode before doing so.
More appropriately, you may just want to go to school and say, I really need to talk to my son. It's an emergency about the family.
Yes.
And then just sneak that bad boy out of the bag, find the other kid, convince him to give you back the flare gun, because I wouldn't give it up, at least not for anything less than a pudding. and then sneak that bad boy out of the school, because I would probably not call the authorities if it was an illegal gun.
Yeah, that's problem number one with your plan. So
yeah. Well, keep in mind the administrators are the ones who called the police, not her.
I probably wouldn't have told the administrators.
Yeah.
It does make you look bad at the PTA meetings. Oh, it's Gloria. Gloria, the one who sent her kid to school with a gun and a flare gun.
Of course.
Hey, Gloria.
You'd wind up looking worse at the PA meetings if you had not notified the administration and some kid shot another kid with a flare gun or something.
Well, then you would be in some shit.
Yeah.
Yes, you would be in some shit.
You probably wouldn't be at the PTA meeting.
Yeah, that is probably true. You'd probably be at the PTA meeting at the prison. Yes.
So where, pray tell, did this fine piece of journalism come from? There?
It came from CNN.
Oh, CNN. Nice. CNN's keeping up to date on all the important things that happen in Queens with children and firearms.
I wouldn't blame them.
Well, it just seems like a bad plan.
It does. Well, at least I had concerns that perhaps this is one of the ones where she sent the gun to protect him from, a marauder of some variety. Because it is pretty often that the marauders go to schools and do that.
Yeah, well, that actually seems like a much worse plan.
It does, but, at least it makes sense. You probably should just, if you're selling the marijuana, use some of that marijuana money and buy another backpack. So buy a Wonder Woman backpack. Your son won't take a Wonder Woman backpack by accident.
That's a good point.
I wonder if she floated the argument during the interrogation, like, I wasn't sending my son to school to shoot someone. I was simply high and forgot to take the guns out.
Yeah.
I'm not crazy.
So I guess the moral here is, I personally, I don't know where I stand on gun rights and such yet, but I definitely think that if you're going to own a gun, try to be responsible.
Yeah, step one is not acquiring it illegally. So.
That's true. That is actually important.
And step two is not using your child's backpack.
Yes. For gun transportation purposes.
Yep. Well, I needed something to carry it in. I like Batman.
Who doesn't like Batman?
All right.
Moving on to a fun article from Religion News Services. The article is Citing Religion, Some Health Workers Refuse Flu Shots.
Yeah, this has been going around. I've seen this.
You got into a field where you're going to be around sick people all the time and people with compromised immune systems all the time. I have to say my position, sorry, you have to get the flu shot. Just don't give the people with compromised immune systems, something which affects their immune system. But if it's avoidable.
But autism.
Yeah, that is a good point. Although not their argument.
Oh.
Their argument against this seems to be that many have medical or religious reasons or doubt the effectiveness of the vaccine. So they believe God did not intend us to be vaccinated. Probably also did not intend us to have heart transplants or any of the drugs that you pump into sick people at hospitals, which is your job.
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there. This occurs in Rhode Island. Multiple states have similar policies of forcing medical workers, nurses, and the like to be vaccinated against the flu on a yearly basis.
Force them to not be walking carriers of a disease which, in patients who are unhealthy or have compromised immune systems, could die from the contagion.
Chickenpox.
Yeah.
So apparently there were 2 children who were patients at the Children's Hospital several years ago that couldn't get flu shots because they were receiving cancer treatment. They ended up getting the flu and dying in the hospital. And they said this was the impetus that said, you know what, we're just going to make all of them do it. And it's not even required. Technically, they can take the out of having to wear a medical face mask to cover that up and latex gloves whenever they interact with any patient. So they're given that option. But they refuse that option as well.
Well, that would make them look slightly silly and might be annoying and uncomfortable.
Right. So there were some, the American Nurses Association and National Nurses United, which represents about 300,000 of the nation's nurses, have not tracked down how many workers have been suspended or fired for refusing to get a shot. But both groups recommend the vaccination but say it should not be mandated and workers shouldn't be fired. Considering that they're unions defending the rights of nurses, that's not surprising.
Right.
But they do list a couple of them in here. It seems like a Miss Carla Brock was fired. She chose not to get a flu shot and was told that she would have to wear a surgical mask. And she says, quote, "I have spiritual and religious reasons to not have those toxins in my body." She doesn't say why she wouldn't wear the mask.
Well, she doesn't want those toxins in her body.
Like the mask.
Right.
Yes. A Joyce Gingrich, no relation, is among 7 employees at IU Health Goshen Hospital in Indiana who was recently fired for refusing flu shots. She says that she gets other vaccinations but thinks it should be a choice. She opposes the, quote, "injustice of being forced to put something in my body."
Okay.
And there's another person, Sakil Chenzira, who filed a lawsuit after being fired 14 months ago in Cincinnati. A U.S. district court announced in December that it will hear her case. She refused to get the shot because she's a vegan and does not eat animal products or animal byproducts. The shots contain egg products. She worked as a customer service representative in the hospital.
Okay.
So, yeah. There's a few things to say about this.
Oh, yeah, I would say.
Not the least of which is, what are you, fucking stupid? Which is basically my position. And I question, Paul, David, do you agree?
Well, you know, I'm not as vehement on this as you are. In all seriousness, there is something that's a little squirmy about being forced to have to have an injection in order to continue to sustain your livelihood and so on and so forth. The problem, I think, is twofold. Number one, you really kind of chose to enter that field of being around sick people, and you should have known from the very beginning that they in order for you to go to any public school and in order for you to go to college or whatnot, you have to have your vaccinations up to date.
You do.
Your measles, mumps, rubella, and your tuberculosis, I think, and all of that stuff. It's simply a requirement. You're not allowed to go unless we can be assured that you're not going to enter a pathogen into a population which vaccines are not 100% effective. They only work on about 75% of the people. The reason why the other 25% don't get sick is because no one has the damn virus because everyone else is vaccinated. Herd immunity. Yes, herd immunity. So when you enter a population like a hospital, it becomes a much more risky situation.
Where there are a lot of people with incredibly compromised immune systems.
And so for that very reason, and because it turns into not just a flu, but, a life or death situation, I think it's reasonable to state that these people, should have your vaccinations up to date in order to work around people with compromised immune systems. But this is all coming from the whole goddamn anti-vaxxer thing that has made people not really look into the evidence, but just stand up and question, well, wait a minute, vaccines are bad. Or it's possible that vaccines are bad.
Yep.
And for that reason, 20 years ago, this was never an issue. Everyone got their damn vaccines and moved on, and that was that.
Well, the problem is they've also invented more vaccines as medical science has progressed.
Yeah.
They found new ways to vaccinate, so now they actually care about it. When you got into the business 20 years ago, when you first started being a nurse at whatever hospital you worked at, it didn't matter because they didn't have as many vaccines. The vaccines weren't as good. They've gotten better, and they've realized that you people are spreading MRSA. People go to the hospital and get sick from something totally unrelated and die. And they said, well, maybe we could fight that somehow and stop having people die in hospitals simply from being around sick people.
Yeah.
And this is their best bet. And it makes me happier to go to a hospital that mandates this.
Yeah, I would definitely feel safer going someplace where I knew that there was a reduced chance, at least, that the person who was coming in to stick needles into my arm or give me a sponge bath or whatever is going to have a reduced chance of passing on a potentially lethal virus to me.
And I've never had a flu shot. I'm not against them. I just never got around to getting one. But if I worked in a field like this, I really, really, really would. I would have to.
Well, yeah. I mean, it seems like a necessity. So, what's your opinion on this whole mess, David?
Well, as you guys know, I'm a libertarian, so I think you're wrong.
Why?
I'm just kidding.
That was you had me convinced. I was fooled.
It was compelling. That's why I was like, whoa, slow down now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Next time I'll keep it going.
Okay, it looks like we actually have a call here. Hopefully it's someone that has been in a hospital, didn't have a flu shot, and caught something horribly contagious and now can tell us the terrible, terrible details.
They're calling us with tales of MRSA.
Yeah. All right. Here we go.
This is 716-731. Hello there.
Hello.
Hello there. All right, my topic here, yes, I've not exactly have anything that's insanely contagious or anything, although I'm very excited to be in a time where Jonas Salk comes up with the first vaccine for a virus. That was actually amazing. That it was the first time in human history where we were not the victims of a disease, but we could actually take a proactive stance on a disease. I think that was incredible.
Well, it's certainly true, and it changed
everything.
Yeah, it changed the healthcare.
It changed healthcare in every single way, and it gets better and better. We get more and more vaccines. There are better and better vaccines. I mean, it's a fantastic time, and it's a wonderful time to be alive and a wonderful time for medicine. They're learning more, they're getting better, and I'm pretty happy about them myself.
Yeah, and preventative medicine is much cheaper.
Let's say this podcast here with the three of you guys, how would you take the fact that we're talking about electing people into office? What would you think about people who think that this is ridiculous? Whether it's vaccines or whether it's evolution, it blows my mind that modern science is not being adopted by our representatives.
Well, modern science is the devil. You know that, right?
Yeah. I'm assuming you're saying ridiculous in the way that they think being compelled to have a vaccine in order to work at a hospital would be ridiculous, and to not accept that intelligent design, not evolution, created Mercury would be ridiculous. That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, ultimately, there was some headway made on an introduction of a little bit more rational thinking with the I hate to say it as a lefty pinko communist, but the election of President Obama. I mean, for example, we started calling it nuclear as opposed to nuclear. That was a step in the right direction. And then there was a pushback with the Tea Party in 2010, who
they went crazy.
Their entire position and platforms used to be no. About anything that's progressive.
Yeah, well, that's actually been my thinking the whole time. My thinking the whole time has been that, the rhetoric got cranked up after the Patriot Act, and we started yelling more, and the right wing didn't get everything they wanted when they thought they would, and then we elected Obama, and I think they went batshit crazy. I think they just went crazy, and I think that, with any luck, this is a last-ditch effort from the crazies on the far right, because there are some reasonable people and reasonable positions on the right wing, and I'm hoping that if the crazies just burn themselves out, maybe we'll get a dialogue again, where the reasonable left and the reasonable right can actually converse, and we won't be arguing about, whether or not you have to put a vibrating dildo into a woman to give her an abortion. That will not be a topic of conversation, at least not on the floor of the House.
Oh, the future looks bright.
It does. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
When I grew up as a child, there was this, commonly used statement that make sure you eat all your food because there's, starving children in China. There was this idea that the United States was ahead of everything, that we were leaders in terms of education, in terms of science. And I would say in the last 10 years, it's gone absolutely in the negative direction, where people they're fighting against it. And it absolutely blows my hippie noodle, to quote Tim Minchin, to confront with that. I'd love to hear what you guys say.
Well, to answer your original question on this, and we're going to probably move on to roller coasters, but to answer your original question on this, I think, the only thing we can do is what we do. We look for, candidates for elected positions who have a more rational and reasonable approach to scientific study and pursuit and healthcare and education and all of those things. We do our radio show to try and, enlighten the world as much as we can. And, we're doing what we can to try and reverse this trend, but it's a big hill, and we got a while to go on it.
All right. Thank you very, very much.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Farewell.
All right. Moving on. Paul, I believe you have something about today?
Yes. We're going
it's a big day.
Do another installment here of This Day in History. Now, January 20th is a significant day in history for a plethora of reasons.
Are you gonna talk about the presidential inaugurations? Presidential inauguration was today. It's always the 20th.
I know that is a very big deal, but no, I'm actually not going to talk about the...
It's also the anniversary of the Iran hostages when they were released back in, 1981.
Yes, it is as well. A very significant event that happened on January 20th. But, I got one to top them all.
Okay. I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm waiting on bated breath.
So... January 20th, 1885, a man named Lamarcus Adna Thompson patented the first roller coaster after having built the first roller coaster, what we would later recognize as a roller coaster, on Coney Island in 1884.
This is big news.
It is. And I used to live on Coney Island, and so the amusement parks that are right down by the shore, I have to say, I'm pretty sure that those were the original ones built in 1884, and I wouldn't put a dead dog on them. So, but regardless, L.A. Thompson, as he's known, or the father of the gravity ride, which we'll get to. The father of
the gravity ride.
Yeah. He didn't invent the roller coaster. The roller coaster had actually been around since the 1700s. And there's over 100 years of whack job gravity powered train or sled rides. So he stole the idea and patented it like you do.
Well, that's always the plan, yeah.
Especially in 1885. That was a good time to be stealing ideas and patenting them.
That's what Edison did. That was his job.
Yeah, pretty much.
He stole ideas and patented them, and he made millions.
Yes. So who did L.A. Lamarcus Thompson steal the idea from for the roller coaster? He stole it from the Russians.
The Russians?
The Russians. And anyone who's familiar with Coney Island, there's an exceedingly large Russian immigrant population.
All comes around full circle.
I don't think this is a coincidence.
No.
So, around St. Petersburg, which eventually became Stalingrad or Leningrad or one of those jobbies.
Yeah.
Around St. Petersburg in the 1700s, Russians, what they were doing, for fun, they were building wooden tracks on snowy, icy mountains, and then they were throwing sleds down these things, for fun and entertainment. Basically, they were kind of building what is, in essence, a bobsled track. And they were called Russian mountains by everyone in the world who wasn't Russian.
And the Russians called them Tuesday afternoon fun?
No, in fact, eventually, although this didn't happen in the 1700s, the Russians gave them a name themselves. And what they called them is, I cannot pronounce it in Russian, but when you translate it to the English, it actually translates to American mountains. So everyone in the world called them, everyone in the world called them Russian mountains, except for the Russians who are like, no, those are American mountains.
Man, that Cold War started a long time ago.
Yeah, it really did. So, a significant event in the history of the evolution of roller coasters occurred in 1784, when the first real roller coaster was built in Russia under the orders of Catherine the Great.
Ah, yes.
Who was apparently crazy.
Well, she was a really good leader. I mean, she was good to the people. She was just batshit crazy.
Well, sometimes those things can go hand in hand. Everyone in the population loves me, and I'm batshit crazy. Sometimes it doesn't work out as well. Mm-hmm. But in Catherine the Great's reign, it apparently
she was great.
So the roller coaster, this new modern design for the roller coaster that Catherine the Great's advisors probably engineered was they put wheels on the sled basically, and they put wheels on top of the track and wheels below the track. And this allowed it to go much faster and take sudden drops without flying off the track, which is, that's basically what we would understand.
And that's basically how the roller coaster works.
Yeah. So
safety.
Yeah.
Safety first. The Russians are big on safety.
So that is they are. The Russians are huge on safety and vodka.
Yes. Well, that's why they're big on safety. Because they do everything drunk.
So, this is basically the design that L.A. Thompson based his Coney Island switchback railway upon. That was what the 1884 coaster that he built was named. And the patent he received on January 20th, 1885, was the first of 30 patents for roller coaster type shit that L.A. Thompson earned. And he eventually earned the nickname of Father of the Gravity Ride, like I had mentioned. So this guy spent basically his entire life, I'm a roller coaster guy. That's my deal.
Well, that's a niche. I mean, if you can find a niche and become father of something, you'll probably live a pretty good living, and you'll get to do whatever you want.
Yeah, maybe so.
Especially if that's making roller coasters.
So, and just to wrap up, since 1885, when we had roller coasters in America, there's been this whole controversy over roller coasters, believe it or not.
There's a roller coaster controversy?
There's a roller coaster controversy.
I did not know this.
And that controversy is that no one knows where the name roller coaster comes from. Mm-hmm. There's like there's like 10
fucking controversy.
There's 10 different groups of people who have historically claimed that they came up with it. One group said it was from putting wheels on toboggans. I don't know how that gets you to the name roller coaster. Mm-hmm. Another group said they came up with it based on roller skates. But no one really knows who is right. And I for one, think that, especially on the anniversary of this very important patent.
Auspicious occasion, further work and research needs to be done in this area. We need to get to the bottom of the origins of the etymology of the word roller coaster. We should call an anthropologist. They
really
could study
should.
this. They could put together years of research, and then we'll know. We'll have an answer.
That is certainly true. All right. So we'll be back in a moment to discuss Josh's favorite planet.
Yes.
Do you have questions, comments, concerns, or random musings? Email us at reason@wnyatheist.org. Out of boredom, you should check us out on Twitter and follow @Reason Podcast. We appreciate it when folks retweet us because it makes us feel smart and important. Listen live Sundays at 8 p.m. Eastern on blogtalkradio.com. Call in, join the conversation at 424-243-9589. Can't listen live on Sundays because you're too busy praying to whatever gods you believe in? We are also on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and you can download the show from wnyatheist.org/reason.php. Find us on Facebook at Reason Podcast, and go ahead and like us. We'll take your liking us as loving us, and that will sufficiently satisfy our egos. We know you're out there, we know you're listening, and we appreciate it more than these words can say.
And we're back. We're back here. Paul, you're going to be discussing clearly an interesting, celestial body.
Yes.
The planet Mercury. Tell me why I should give a damn about the planet Mercury. Just give me some stuff.
All right. Well, there's many important things going on with the planet Mercury, and I'm glad you asked the question. So I got to say, a lot of the things I'm going to be talking about here were touched on superficially and through some funhouse mirror lens of the batshit crazy paper that you discussed in the beginning of the episode. So we're going to be rehashing a couple of things here, but we'll actually get to what the legitimate scientists, not the evolutionists or the creationists, what the legitimate scientists have to say about what's going on here. So, again, as Josh mentioned, this is our ongoing, so far, 867-part series of the planets. We're starting as close as you can get to our star, the planet Mercury. So, I would say I have absolutely nothing interesting to say about Mercury.
Okay, well, thank you, and you folks have a nice day.
Farewell. Okay. That's not true. Mercury does have a lot going on. There's some interesting things going on. It's interesting and it's wacky, and you would never know it by speaking with Josh, who, again, oh my God, he hates Mercury.
I despise it more than you can possibly imagine.
Yeah, it's a weird kink you got there.
No, I've got my fair share of phobias. Spiders are fine. I don't mind snakes, but Mercury causes me a lot of apprehension.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mercury is the closest planet to the Sun. It's also the smallest planet in the solar system. Because remember, we kicked Pluto out of the club.
Too small. Fuck you, Pluto.
So Mercury's number one.
Number one.
And,
yes.
Before I delve too deeply into Mercury itself, I just wanted to mention, we are going to talk about Pluto, as it is classified as a minor planet currently. But, it's going to be, probably 9-10 months down the road if we're doing these once every couple of weeks or so. So if you'd like to cheat, go ahead and take a look at why we had to stop calling Pluto a planet, and a lot of the really wacky shit that surrounded the whole deal. So if you go to the Offensive Atheist blog, which is blog.wnyatheist.org, there's a post there called Unicorns on the Planet Eris, where I actually went into some detail as to the arguments for keeping Pluto a planet, how they're batshit crazy and wrong, and why we ultimately had to stop calling Pluto a planet. So check that out. Now, getting back to Mercury. Again, smallest planet, and also has the most eccentric orbit. It does not go around the sun in a circle. It's like a big fat egg. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the egg-shaped orbit and Mercury's incredibly slow rotation about its own axis allows for some really strange days and nights. So Mercury travels around the sun in 88 days. It rotates around its own axis every 58.7 days. Wow. So it's, more than half of a year for it to do what takes the Earth 24 hours. Mm-hmm. But here's where things get weird. So, if you could stand on Mercury and watch the sunrise, which would be a really bad idea, and we're gonna get to why, the time from sunrise to the second sunset would be 176 days. Again, Mercury is rotating so slowly about its axis that a day lasts longer than a year. In fact, it lasts exactly 2 years. So even though it does a complete 360-degree rotation, because it's traveling around the sun and the sun relative to Mercury is changing position, means that you stay in the sunlight for a total of 176 days. Now, yes, I did say second sunset.
Yes, you did.
Now, if you were to watch the sunrise, again, bad idea, you would see the sun rise, it would clear the horizon, it would stop, then it would go back down in the wrong direction, go below the horizon, and then it would rise again.
So it's got dawn down. Mercury is good at dawn.
Well, it does the exact same thing 176 days later at sunset. Mm-hmm. It goes over the horizon and comes back up for, an encore and then heads back down. But basically, if you were on Mercury, the sun would appear to be drunk or something. The sun's just, wandering around the sky. I'm all confused.
And that's why religion never developed on Mercury.
That does make sense. So you'd think that this slow barbecue role that Mercury's in, combined with being the closest planet to the sun, you'd expect that Mercury would be the hottest planet. Mm-hmm. This is not the case. Mm-hmm. This is not the case at all. What it does have is it has the largest thermal gradient of any planet on the solar system, meaning that at any given time, the side facing the sun has a temperature of 700 Kelvin, and the side facing away from the sun averages around 110 Kelvin. Now, to put these in American terms, mm-hmm. If we're going to use Fahrenheit, that's the hot side has a temperature of 800.3 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's toasty.
And the cool side has a temperature of negative 261.7 degrees Fahrenheit. Now
that is not a hospitable planet. I mean, they talk about the desert, how it's really hot in the day and really cold at night.
Yeah.
That seems worse than Death Valley. I mean, a little bit.
Yeah, well, the difference between day and night is 1,062.03 degrees Fahrenheit. Mm. That's the difference between being in the sun and being in the shade on Mercury. So, yeah. Due to a couple of reasons. Again, slow rotation, incredibly long days, and Mercury pretty much has no atmosphere, though. It's not like the moon, though. It does have something. An atmosphere of sorts containing hydrogen, helium, oxygen, sodium, calcium, potassium, and, significantly, water vapor. These molecules, these elements combine to make the atmosphere and give Mercury a pressure level of about 10 to the negative 14th power bar. Now, for some perspective, the Earth's pressure at sea level is 1 bar. Mm-hmm. So Earth is 1 bar. The pressure on Mercury is 0, decimal point, 14 zeros after the decimal point, and then the number 1. So
that is a big difference. Yeah, to be perfectly honest, perfectly frank, that's an incomprehensible difference. Yeah. I have no idea. I understand all the zeros. I don't honestly and could not, I don't believe, know what that means.
It is basically, in order to be on Mercury, if you could stand the temperature, which you couldn't, either one, the hot or the cold,
right?
You would have to wear a spacesuit, and there'd be random molecules of gas kind of bumping into you every once and again, but there would be, for all intents and purposes, no atmosphere. So Mercury's atmosphere appears to have water vapor, and this is according to spectroscopic analysis and was further substantiated by Mariner 10, which is a satellite that flew by Mercury in 1974.
That's actually where we get a lot of our info on Mercury, is Mariner 10.
Yes, that is true. And, I wanted to point out to you specifically, Josh, that Mariner 10, this mission, this multi-million-dollar mission, this satellite mission that we sent off to explore the inner planets of the solar system, it flew by Venus and did analysis one time. Flew by Mercury 3 times. 3 times.
Why?
So apparently NASA thinks it's more interesting than you do.
Or maybe they just couldn't make it go past Venus more than once. Went past Venus on the way to Mercury, and they just let it spin around like it was going down the drain.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened.
Okay, that's what I was figuring.
So, meanwhile, on a planet very, very far away, Earth, we spent decades pointing the VLA in New Mexico at Mercury. Now, the VLA is the Very Large Array. You may have seen it.
That does make sense. That's a good name.
They tend to name things in kind of direct terms. They're not like, fancy named radio telescope system.
Yeah, they're not an imaginative bunch.
Well, that's a very large array. What should we call it?
The Very Large Array.
Yeah, so the VLA, if you've ever seen the movie Contact, it was featured in the movie Contact. It's basically a field in New Mexico with, I think, 36 radio telescopes, and they point them all in the same direction, and it's one of the most powerful tools we have for analyzing planets and star systems, galaxies, and quasars, nebula, all kinds of stuff like that. It allows us to study all of the radio noise that's coming from the universe. So what they discovered with the VLA was that in addition to the water vapor in the atmosphere, there appears to be frozen water on Mercury. Yep, frozen water, like ice.
Yes.
Ice at the bottom of deeper craters on Mercury. Because again, Mercury was hit with a lot of meteors or asteroids.
It's covered with pockmarks. I mean, I can't imagine how many. I know that the magnetic field we've got protects us, but holy crap, there's a lot of stuff out there. Just random shit flying around.
Yeah, and, it's pretty obvious when you look at Mercury. I know it's convenient. It's like the magic wand asteroids that you were speaking of earlier, but it is kind of the deal. So in the deeper craters, the day where it's normally 176 days long with the 800-degree temperatures, the craters, they're so deep. If they're away from the equator enough, like up towards the either north or south pole,
so they're not getting the direct sunlight.
Yeah, the sunlight in deeper craters doesn't actually hit the bottom at all.
Right.
And that's where we find this ice, where the temperatures are actually really, really freezing cold. So we got water vapor, we got solid ice we've discovered. Well, let's talk about the really exciting stuff. Geology.
That is, I mean, you and I both agree, that is one exciting science.
Oh, it is. Who doesn't love rocks? So Mercury is one of the 4 terrestrial planets in our solar system, the others being Venus, Earth, and Mars, and not Pluto.
No, not Pluto.
So Mercury is also the second densest planet, which you mentioned in the article.
I did.
Where they stated it in kind of a haphazard and weird way, where they said, it's the densest planet, except for Earth. But, yeah, so...
Well, they don't like to think of Earth as a planet. They like to think of Earth as a perfect paradisal creation of something or other.
Well, that does make sense, yeah. So, and, I was actually surprised to learn that Earth was number 1. I would have, perhaps stupidly, because it's a gas giant, I would have perhaps thought Jupiter.
Yeah.
But because Jupiter's so massive that it has such a gravitational field that it's nearly a protostar. It's nearly collapsing with such force that nuclear fusion would take place. Jupiter's not big enough for that to happen. But if Jupiter were bigger, it would actually condense itself enough to cause a fusion reaction. But we'll get to that when we talk about Mercury. No, when we talk about Jupiter. Yeah. Okay. Yes. So Mercury is basically made of iron and sand. 42% of Mercury's mass is the iron core. Now that's huge. The mass of the iron core on Earth is 17% of the overall mass. So there's 2 theories as to why Mercury has the largest core relative to size in the solar system. One of them Josh already mentioned in his discussion of creationist whack jobs. Now, the first theory being Mercury could have been, when it originally formed, it could have been much, much larger, and early on in the history of the solar system, it could have been struck by a meteor, about 1/6 of its size or so, and this impact would have been so powerful that it would pretty much knock almost everything off of the planet and out into open space, perhaps except for really heavy shit like, I don't know, let's say iron.
Like the core that's still there?
Yeah.
This kind of makes sense.
Pretty much. So, I mean, that's one explanation, and
it's pretty good.
It is a reasonable explanation. There is another explanation or another theory as to why Mercury could have this
possibly a little better one, actually.
Exceptionally large core. The alternative theory is that Mercury could have been formed not by the accretion disk coming from the sun, but from the accretion disk coming from the solar nebula. But before all the material that would eventually become the sun collapsed into the nice, relatively uniform ball that we see, the sun was just kind of a massive cloud of stuff that was condensing together due to gravity, and at that time it was releasing a significantly larger amount of energy. So if Mercury was formed by the solar nebula before the sun had stabilized to become a sun, Mercury would have been about twice as large, but the pre-star solar nebula would have heated Mercury's surface to much higher temperatures than the sun does right now. So some estimates based upon the calculations they were able to do on this state, that the temperature would have been ranged between 2,500 Kelvin to as high as 10,000 Kelvin. So again, to translate, that is a temperature between 4,040 degrees Fahrenheit to as high as 17,540 degrees Fahrenheit.
That is toasty.
That is nice.
That's enough to evaporate rock, I think.
Yeah.
That does seem reasonable.
So, and that's exactly what the theory purports, is that this would be hot enough to melt and vaporize most of the rocks and other shit. And that rock gas would be pushed into open space by the solar winds, and Mercury would shrink down, leaving the heavier, denser materials such as iron and some silica and stuff like that. But for the most part, it was a big ball of iron floating there. So Mercury was either hit by a gigantic meteor or it melted. Either way, it's basically a chunk of floating metal at this point. And this huge chunk of metal creates a magnetosphere, a magnetic field surrounding the planet, much like Earth has. And neither Mars nor Venus have one. So if we could figure out how to put a colony on an 800 degree Fahrenheit planet, we would be protected from...
We'd need lots of shade.
Well, yeah. We'd hang out in those deeper craters, but we'd be protected from the solar radiation, which is actually kind of a big deal for those who care about this sort of thing, because we are actually... it's not talked about a whole lot, but we're going to have a problem with colonizing Mars if Mars doesn't have the magnetic field to protect us from the solar winds. Now,
and we have a very, very bad day.
Yeah, and at first they thought that Mars didn't have a magnetosphere. Now there's maybe some evidence that there's an incredibly weak one or something, but either way it's going to be a problem. So we decided, it'd be a good idea. Let's figure out what's going on with Venus. Why? We like to throw shit up there and have it take pictures.
Well, that's how we do it. That's science.
So in 2004, we decided to send the satellite named Messenger, which is a stupid acronym for Mercury Surface Space Environment Geochemistry and Ranging. They love making acronyms out of stuff.
Well, NASA has an acronym department.
The mission was to map Mercury's surface, because Voyager 10 mapped only about 45% of the surface, and also they wanted to map the magnetic field. Messenger didn't reach Mercury until 2009, and is currently still orbiting, and it's scheduled to do so until March of this year, actually, and then it's going to stop doing it. So one of the things that Messenger found was, strangely enough, at the poles, liquid water. So now we've found gaseous water vapor, ice, and now liquid water as well. That's really strange. It's really not supposed to be there. And we really have no idea what's going on with this. Again, this data was collected relatively recently, and this data is still being collected as we try and figure out what's going on with the liquid water on Mercury. So further study needs to be done, which is important, because if the Earth ever runs out of water, or we contaminate it with all the fracking and clean coal or something, we could go get water from the 800-degree planet that takes 5 years to get to. Perfectly practical.
Yeah, that seems fine.
So, yeah, I mean, that's what's going on with Mercury and why it is of interest to us at this point. Just real quick, just to kind of go through a little bit of the etymology and the history here. Mercury was discovered by the Samaritans in the 2nd millennium BC, and it was originally named Nabu. I wanted to mention that specifically because Nabu really sounds like a Star Wars planet to me.
It is.
Yes.
Oh, is it? Is it actually?
Yes.
It doesn't just sound like one?
It became canon in episode 1.
Oh, so Star Wars
see?
takes place on Mercury.
Yes.
Which explains why it was a long time ago, although not a galaxy far, far away. I think maybe George Lucas is a liar.
Well, if you drive so far, you come back around, you may think you're in another galaxy.
That does make sense.
Yeah.
The universe is a big circle, I think.
Columbus thought he hit India, but he hit American land.
Yes, right.
Or the Bahamas or something.
I actually believe it was Haiti is what he hit.
Sure, you can say that. Those are words.
That's the consensus, is that he hit Haiti.
Okay, so yeah, Nabu sounds like a Star Wars planet. The Greeks thought that it was 2 different planets. They named one that they could see in the morning Apollo, and they named the one you could see at night Hermes. Mm-hmm. And then the Romans came along, and they stole the Greek gods, and they
renamed them.
Yeah, they stole the Greek god Hermes and changed his name to Mercury, which thereby changed the name of the planet to Mercury, and it's pretty much been called that in one form or another ever since. So, Josh, do you think there's a little bit more of interest going on with Mercury now that you've had a little bit of enlightenment as to its more mystical, magical, or geological, at least, properties?
Well, let's just say that I don't believe that Mercury is as stupid, perhaps, as I thought it was. It's still a pretty stupid planet, as planets go, but, there may be some redeeming value to the planet Mercury, especially if we could spend, 10 years getting water back from it.
Yeah.
And that's what I think we'll do. We'll pollute the water we have, because we know we can just spend 10 years and get a lot of water from Mercury. I'm sure it'll be easy to get it off the planet and easy to get it here.
Yeah. So in human terms, basically what you're saying is, at the outset of this episode, you'd considered Mercury to be just completely and totally useless, as if it could not even put on shoes.
It's the my and my very educated mother, so the my is important. So I did give it that. That's the thing that people do to try and remember the planets. I never really realized why people do that.
Something
about pizza, but now apparently there's no pizza because they got rid of Pluto. So my very educated mother just sat under 9 pizzas. I don't have any idea.
Yeah,
I was never good at those. I actually had more trouble remembering those than the actual planets.
Sometimes that is certainly the case. But that's Mercury. Take it for what you will. I think there's some interesting things about it, and if anyone has anything they would like to add or discuss or comment on, go ahead and give us an email at reason@wnyatheist.org. We'll be doing further planets as we go along. And the next one will be in a couple of weeks. We'll be discussing the planet Venus.
Yes. Venus, the girly planet.
It really is. Although it has a really, really thick atmosphere.
Well, some women are dense. Yeah. And you can direct all hate mail to reason@wnyatheist.org.
It's not a matter of being dense. It's like that Queen song, the fat bottom girls, they make the rockin' world go round.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right on, brother.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on here to You're Wrong, and let me tell you why.
All right.
So what is the topic for this week, Josh?
All students should be required to say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes. Now we're doing this in honor of the presidential inauguration today.
It's a very patriotic day. We are continuing the continuity of government, and we are continuing the democratic process. So we should focus on something democratical.
Yeah, like forcing children to. Let's just go ahead and flip it.
Don't get into it yet. Come on, Paul.
Okay.
Okay. So of course, heads is going to be the affirmative. Yeah. Tails is the negative. And Paul, would you like the coin?
You take.
Choose
the coin.
wisely. I'm taking the coin.
You're taking the coin.
Okay.
I'm going to regret that.
And it's tails. So you are saying that they should be.
Okay, well, I think that's easy enough to explain my reasonings for thinking that children should be required to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Now, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And these are basically, and I'm specifically excluding the under God part, because if you do exclude that, then these principles are basically the founding principles of the founding fathers who were crafting a new world, a new republic, a new governmental system. Now, one of the things that we have a problem with in this country is we've kind of lost our way in, basically paying attention to the more important aspects of politics, paying attention to the democratic process and the republic processes and our elected officials and those who actually do the electing, i.e. the Electoral College. Now, the Pledge of Allegiance being recited by children every morning would serve in some small way to remind them of these founding principles, and therefore could go a long way towards improving our culture, society, and our population's interaction with the governmental organizations that ultimately govern us, but are put into office by us. And allowing children to have a reminder of this on a daily basis allows them to understand that they're in control in the end. So ultimately, it's very liberating that we do this, and it's very important.
I find that incredibly compelling. I find that I have to say I'm now starting to think I'm sad I got this end of the argument. I know we always flip a coin and it's random, so we don't know which side we're going to get. And I'm kind of wishing I got your side because it sounds like you've got it down. Out of curiosity, what was last week's show on, Paul?
Last week's show was on cults.
And one of the characteristics of mind control techniques used by cults is chanting and repetition as a form of mind control and lowering people's resistance and lowering critical thinking. That's correct, right?
That is correct. I do not see how it actually applies here.
Well, I'm not saying it does.
Okay. Well,
I'm just asking if getting people, especially young people, because I believe the age of 7 is the age of reason, getting young people to chant this patriotic chant to program them to lessen their critical thinking and believe that this is the greatest nation in the world, regardless of any problems or other things. It seems to me it leads to the kind of thing out there where people just sit stagnant on America because they believe we're wonderful and have no room for improvement. It doesn't seem like it benefits society at all. You're saying it's good, but it seems to me it's promoting fascism. And I don't mean, I'm not throwing it out there like the appeal to fascism people do, but it is somewhat fascistic in that it's a kind of a mind control. It's a programming technique to force children in violation of any freedom of speech they may have, and you do it before they're adults, so they don't have the rights to decide what they're allowed to say. You do this as a technique to promote your hyper nationalist agenda. Well,
I think that's absolute bullshit. This is a far cry from all of the positions you've laid out that cults typically use in order to brainwash members.
Isolation, where they put them in a school where they're all alone and they're controllable. Take away their sense of control. You change their schedules every day in an attempt to alter or every year in an attempt to alter their sense of timing. In fact, I got to be honest with you, this really does fall into a sort of a mind control technique, and I think that may be the problem with our critical thinking skills in young people, is that schools are now sort of militaristic establishments that are programming children as opposed to leading them to critical thought.
Well, your argument would hold even the slightest bit of water if they currently did mandate that children say the Pledge of Allegiance. Now, again, reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, which offers no code words or code language and is not a chanted, repetitive process, but simply a one-off morning ritual to establish the dictums of, again, the founding fathers and the principles of this nation. This is completely antithetical to your position of fascism. It would be fascism if there was, number one, coded language, number two, it was recited ad nauseum by the children, and its meaning and intent were not clear and clearly explained.
How long do you go to school for in primary school? Or basically your mandatory school is about 12 years.
Well, sure.
I would say that's ad nauseum.
It's once a day, man.
For 12 long, and they are long, years. So, your ad nauseum there is a little bit of a little fuzzy. So I'll give you that, although with a throw-in of contention there. Additionally, I pledge allegiance to the flag, not the principles, to the flag, not the Constitution, to the symbolism of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands.
For which the flag represents, so you're basically pledging allegiance to the republic.
Right, again, not the principles, to the government. the government is the representation itself of the people, of all these things, but it's the government, it's the bureaucracy to which you're pledging allegiance, to which it stands one nation, indivisible. See, that seems nice.
Oh, yeah.
With liberty and justice for all.
Yeah.
And they've been using this since the time of segregation, when there was not liberty or justice for all. So it's inherently an oxymoronic and a lie.
Well, you can't.
It's deceitful and it's lying. And there's not even liberty and justice for all now. So, I mean, really what you're doing is lying to children, saying it's all wonderful, it's all great, there's no room for improvement. And again, goes to my original point that you're programming children not to be proactive in fixing any problem to make a more perfect union.
I think your position could not be more wrong. I think it's clear that the strides that we've made towards equality and justice for all that have occurred since the inception of this Pledge of Allegiance. Yes, there's no way to say that these weren't at least due in part directly to the Pledge of Allegiance being instituted as a reminder that we should be one nation, we should be indivisible, and we should have liberty and justice for all. These serving as a reminder allowed these children to grow up and enter a world where they would invoke the change that was substantiated every morning to them by the principles contained therein.
Yeah, maybe. That certainly sounds fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
I'm certainly not one to step on your toes. How long do you think that they? No. How long do you think they were doing the Pledge of Allegiance before they changed to the under God? Do you know? Because I honestly don't. I can look it up and find out when it was instituted.
You know, I guess I just assumed it happened in 1954 when they started putting it on the money.
Well, that is when it got in. It was in the 50s. Let's see. Pledge of Allegiance was put in. Looking it up here, in 1892.
Okay.
So, under God has actually been in there for almost as long as it wasn't. So you seem to be saying that these have equal value, that it was done for about 60 years without the under God, and about 60 years with the under God, and you're just sort of taking it out willy-nilly, which I don't think is reasonable, and I believe, again, goes back to your fascistic underpinning in this whole argument. But it seems to me that to take that out is going to be seen as a violation to any number of Americans and cause a lot of strife and disharmony, whereas it would just be simpler to not force them, especially those folks that have a religious objection to it. The Jehovah's Witnesses, for instance, have a religious objection to saying the Pledge of Allegiance. As, you know, I think that my family would have when I was a child, forcing me to pledge my allegiance to a political entity, to a flag which represents a political entity in a country that practices democracy, freedom of speech, and freedom of expression. It seems to me that it really behooves one to question this proto-fascism you seem to be presenting.
Well, I think clearly, you're coming at this from preconceived notions. You've already established your position, which is that you are anti-American and you are anti-government. And I think that is no more clearly established than in the last diatribe that you just gave regarding, yes, okay, so to put all of the principles that you just espoused in a position higher than duty to country and support of said country is anti-American.
And I support my country no matter what. Like when we put the Japanese in internment camps, or, when we used to enslave huge sections of our population. No, it's the rights of the people who make up the government, not this addiction to a love of government or a love of the political entity itself. It's the ideals behind it, and the Pledge of Allegiance doesn't present that.
Well, that's fine. You can say that all you want, but the Bible substantiated slavery as well. So clearly, the country itself and its decisions during a time of war, specifically not only the internment of the Japanese Americans in Manzanar, but also adding one nation under God to the money, putting indivisible one nation under God into the Pledge of Allegiance, was done at a time when the country was in severe danger and severe jeopardy. There was much concern about communism and how it would affect Americans, and it would definitely be something that would just completely mess up the great experiment, which is this democratic republic that we've tried so hard for so many years to create.
I think you've actually shown the bias that you have. If the people were to vote for and promote in a democratic fashion communism or some other form of government, then you would be in opposition to that because you believe the status quo, the government itself, is there. So you are obviously pro-government and against the people, something which I think one of our founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, would object to heartily.
No, sir. America is the greatest country on earth, and anyone who wants to be a communist can just get out and join the secret Muslims and the Russians and the Kiwis from the place where they filmed Lord of the Rings. So clearly, yes, America, greatest country on earth, established. America, a nation under God, established. And that's how we got to where we are. And informing children of this on a daily basis is important for us to continue our world dominance in education, in finance, in all of the areas which America simply rocks at, which is what we do. And that is my position.
All right. I think enough information has been presented here. I think we all know where you stand. I think we know that you believe in country over individual. You're against the individual human. You're against the democratic experiment, and you're pro the republic of it, which is, truthfully a rule by the few, not a democratic rule by the many. But that's neither here nor there. I think the people out there have heard enough, and I think they'll be able to draw the appropriate conclusions about your fascistic and my liberty-oriented perspectives on your forcing people to chant their allegiance to an all-powerful, entity, the government.
Hey, Paul?
Yes.
Would you permit me to sum up your argument?
Oh, this is new. This is exciting. All right.
What do you got?
What do you got, David?
America.
Yeah. Basically, I think that is the case.
And my argument is, if I can sum it up as succinctly and concisely, Americans.
All right. Well, we want to know what you think. Send us an email at reason@wnyatheist.org. Now, do I really need to do the mea culpa? I mean, does it even really need to happen? Does anyone not believe that I think being forced to recite the Pledge of Allegiance is fascistic and dictatorial and awful and horrible and bad?
No, I think we should definitely keep it up there just so people don't get confused, because I think that a lot of folks may be, listening half-heartedly and may lose track of things and hear the argument and think that, for instance, I believe the earth was flat when we did the flat earth argument, or that, you believe that we should chain children to desks and force them to chant for America.
Yeah.
I think we should just leave that vague so people can make their own determinations.
Yeah, if anyone just kind of drops in, 75 to 80% of the way through the show, it's like, what the fuck are these? Reason. I do not think that word means what you think it means. So, all right. Well, I wanted to mention real quick as we wrap up the show here. Last week we asked people if you like the show and you're able to go to the website wnyatheist.org and send us $1 or $2 through the donation button that's on the main page there. We want to thank the people who did. We appreciate it. We're putting together a fund so that we can actually bring you more new and exciting things throughout the year, which we plan on doing so. So, if you can stop by the website and do that, that'd be great, if you can. Now, next week...
I actually also would like to just give a shout-out to the delegation that the Western New York Atheists, Freethinkers, Skeptics, Considerers, Critical... What is the name of the group?
It just keeps going.
Atheist Community of Western New York. There is a delegation going to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the American Atheists this March down in Austin. I'd like to give a shout-out to them, and hopefully they have a good time.
Yeah, that's
last year in March, we, and by we I mean Western New York delegation along with Reason Podcast did go to the Reason rally. We had a fine time. This year we're not able to make the trek this March, but I would like to just give a shout out to the folks there and wish them happy trails.
Yes, and bring me back something. As long as it's free.
That is Paul's rule.
Yeah.
You have to bring him back something, and you can't have paid for it.
That is the deal. Okay, so I did want to mention we're going to have a very, very special show next week. Now, for all of you who are familiar with James Randi.
The Amazing Randy.
There's a new film coming out. The fellows who put it together actually are doing it through a Kickstarter campaign. And they're quite successful so far. It looks like they're going to meet their goals, but we decided we're going to have them on the show and give them a little help anyway. So their movie is called An Honest Liar, and they're going to be calling in by phone. We're gonna have a chat with them next week. The production team, basically the producer and director, and we're going to find out a little bit more about the backstory as to how they got involved in making this film, and whether or not they're surprised that James Randi is actually as short as he is.
He's a very short man. It's surprising. We saw him at the Reason rally. The man's very short.
Yes, he really is. He really is. So that's our very special episode next week. Again, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns about anything we talked about, whether that be batshit creationists or Mercury or whether
backpack guns,
whether or not you think it's a good idea to send your child to school with a flare gun and a .22
in a Batman backpack, it's very important. Not a Wonder Woman backpack.
That would be different.
Hey,
That'd be silly.
Batman didn't use guns.
That's right. It's almost ironic.
He had a grappling gun.
And his motorcycle in the movie has machine guns on it. It does seem, seems like he's just BSing people. I mean,
I don't use guns, except when I use guns. But other than that, no guns. All right. Well, thanks for staying with us to the bottom of another episode of Reason. And until we speak again next week, farewell.
sayonara.
Goodbye.